There are nights when the darkness around you is not as heavy as the darkness within you, nights when the ceiling feels closer than the sky, and your thoughts echo louder than any sound in the room, nights when you lie awake wondering how something as simple as living became so exhausting. You replay conversations that never resolved, prayers that felt unanswered, efforts that seemed invisible, and you begin to wonder if perhaps you have drifted too far, if perhaps your heart has become a place where light no longer visits easily. And yet, even in those silent hours when hope feels thin and your chest feels tight, there is a promise Allah placed into the rhythm of creation itself, a promise that does not arrive with noise or spectacle, but with a softness that only the tired truly recognize. It is the promise of Fajr, the first light that does not argue with the night, but gently replaces it. The night of the soul is not always caused by tragedy or visible loss. Sometimes it is simply the accumulation of small disappointments, delayed dreams, unspoken fears, and quiet self-doubt that settles like dust on the heart. You continue functioning, you smile when expected, you fulfill responsibilities, yet inside you carry a question you rarely voice. Will I ever feel light again? It is in this state that the wisdom of Fajr becomes more than a prayer time. It becomes a language Allah speaks to the weary. The sky itself demonstrates what the heart often forgets, that darkness is never permanent, that it does not need to be fought aggressively or chased away with force, because it is designed to end. When the Quran speaks of the dawn, it does not describe it as a sudden explosion of brightness, but as a gentle splitting of the sky, as if the night itself opens willingly to allow light through. This is not accidental imagery. It is mercy encoded into the universe. Allah could have created day and night as abrupt switches, but instead He designed transition, gradients, softness. The first light of Fajr does not blind, it reassures. It whispers to the horizon before it speaks to the earth. And in that whisper is a lesson for every heart that feels overwhelmed, because healing rarely arrives as a loud miracle. It arrives as a subtle shift, a small ease, a quiet clarity that you almost miss if you are not watching closely. There were nights in the life of the Prophet, peace be upon him, when the weight of rejection and hardship would settle heavily upon him. Yet his refuge was not in dramatic displays of despair, but in standing before Allah in the stillness before dawn. The world would be asleep, distractions paused, expectations silent, and in that space he would pour out his heart with a certainty that no exhaustion could extinguish. It was not that his struggles disappeared overnight, but that his heart found alignment, and when the heart aligns with its creator, burdens do not always vanish, yet they become lighter to carry. Fajr was not merely the start of his day. It was the renewal of his inner world. You may feel that your night has lasted longer than it should, that others seem to wake into bright mornings while you continue navigating shadows, but the soul's night is not measured by clocks or calendars. It is measured by how distant you feel from peace and how deeply you long for relief. And Allah, in His infinite knowledge, understands the night you carry even when you struggle to articulate it yourself. The first light of Fajr is not reserved for the perfect believer or the spiritually strong. It rises for the hesitant, the uncertain, the one who missed prayers yesterday, the one who feels unworthy today, and the one who fears tomorrow. The sky does not check credentials before it brightens, and neither does Allah restrict His mercy to those who never falter. Pause here for a moment, not to analyze or question, but simply to breathe, because sometimes the heart listens better when it feels accompanied rather than instructed. If you have been carrying heaviness quietly, if your chest tightens at night with thoughts you cannot easily silence, remain with this reflection a little longer, not out of obligation but out of gentleness toward yourself. Because what unfolds next is not meant to add weight to your shoulders, but to ease what has been resting there unseen. There is something profoundly intimate about the moments before Fajr, when the world is hushed and the sky begins to soften. It is as if Allah creates a private corridor between heaven and the hearts that are awake, whether by prayer, worry, or restless reflection. The scholars often speak of this time as a window of acceptance, a period when supplications rise with less obstruction, when sincerity feels less crowded by distraction. Yet beyond theological discussions lies a simple truth that the exhausted heart can grasp without complexity. Before the world demands anything from you, Allah invites you gently toward Him. Think of the stories of the prophets who endured seasons of uncertainty that seemed endless. Prophet Yaqub wept until his sight faded, not because he lacked faith, but because faith does not cancel emotion, it anchors it. Prophet Yunus found himself in layers of darkness, the night, the ocean, and the belly of the whale, yet even there his remembrance pierced through the depths and reached the most merciful. Their nights were not short, and their relief was not instant, yet the dawn came for them in forms perfectly tailored to their journeys. The lesson is not that hardship disappears quickly, but that divine light is never absent. That's even when unseen. The first light of Fajr teaches the heart patience without passivity. It does not say, do nothing and wait, nor does it command frantic effort. It demonstrates balance. The sky shifts gradually, and yet the shift is certain. In the same way, the soul is invited to move towards Allah with consistency rather than intensity alone. A single sincere whisper of remembrance before dawn can weigh more than long speeches uttered without presence. A quiet intention to rise, even if imperfectly fulfilled, can be a seed Allah nurtures into strength. The beauty of Fajr is not in flawless performance, but in the willingness to turn toward light, even when your steps feel small. There is also a psychological mercy embedded in this time, because the early morning holds a clarity the night rarely offers. The thoughts that seem tangled begin to loosen, worries that felt overwhelming begin to shrink, and decisions that seemed impossible begin to reveal pathways. This is not coincidence, it is part of the divine design. The body resets, the mind refreshes, and the heart finds a quieter rhythm. When you align even a portion of your awareness with this transition, you begin to notice that hope is not always a grand emotion. Sometimes it is simply the ability to breathe without heaviness. And if you are listening while feeling tired, emotionally stretched, or unsure whether these reflections truly apply to you, stay a little longer with this unfolding, not because you must extract a lesson, but because your heart deserves moments where it is spoken to with kindness rather than criticism. There is more in the light ahead than what the night allowed you to see, and the journey toward it is not rushed, nor is it reserved for those who never stumble. The horizon is already shifting, even if your eyes are still adjusting, and what follows carries a gentleness meant specifically for the parts of you that have been waiting quietly for relief. And as the light continues to spread across the horizon, something subtle begins to happen within the heart as well. Because Fajr is not only the arrival of brightness in the sky, it is the arrival of permission within the soul, permission to begin again without carrying yesterday as a permanent identity. The night often convinces the heart that its struggles define it, that mistakes linger longer than mercy, that distance from Allah becomes a fixed state. But the first light of dawn quietly challenges that narrative without confrontation. It does not argue with the night. It simply replaces it. And in doing so, it teaches the believer a truth that words alone sometimes fail to deliver. That renewal is not earned by perfection, but opened through return. There are mornings when rising for Fajr feels effortless, when the body moves almost naturally toward prayer and the heart feels receptive. And there are mornings when the bed feels heavier than mountains and the mind negotiates for more minutes of sleep. Both experiences exist within the journey of faith, and neither cancels the other. Allah does not measure you only by your strongest days. He sees the intention present even on the days you struggle. The consistency of turning back even imperfectly is what shapes the soul over time. The first light of Fajr is not a reward for spiritual excellence. It is an invitation extended daily, regardless of yesterday's shortcomings. In the quiet moments after the prayer, when the sky is no longer dark yet, the world has not fully awakened, the heart is offered a rare space where expectations are minimal and sincerity feels accessible. This is why many of the righteous cherish these hours, not because they were free from worry, but because they found alignment there. The early light does not erase responsibilities or hardships waiting later in the day, but it changes the way the heart carries them. It introduces perspective before pressure, remembrance before distraction, and gratitude before comparison. And when gratitude arrives first, even small blessings begin to feel expansive. Sometimes the soul fears hope because it has been disappointed before, and disappointment can create a quiet hesitation toward optimism, as if expecting relief might lead to further pain. Yet Fajr teaches the heart to hope without fear by presenting evidence rather than promises. Every single day without exception, the night ends. Clouds may delay visibility, storms may blur the sky, but the transition still occurs. In the same way, the believer is reminded that unseen shifts may already be unfolding even when circumstances appear unchanged. Divine timing often works beneath the surface, preparing outcomes the heart is not yet ready to perceive. Reflect for a moment on how many worries have felt permanent in the past but eventually softened or passed. How many fears once occupied your thoughts completely but now exist only as distant memories. The heart rarely recognizes progress while it is happening, yet when it looks back, it sees how Allah carried it through seasons it once believed it could not survive. Fajr is a daily reminder of this unseen assistance, a visual reassurance that transitions occur even when you are not actively orchestrating them. The sky does not rush its transformation, and the heart is not expected to rush its healing. There is also mercy in the fact that Fajr arrives quietly. It does not demand attention through noise or force. It appears with humility, almost shy at first, as if giving the weary heart time to adjust. This gentleness mirrors how Allah nurtures faith within His servants. He does not overwhelm the heart with sudden burdens of expectation, that He allows growth to occur in layers, strengthening the soul gradually so that obedience becomes sustainable rather than exhausting. When the believer understands this, striving no longer feels like pressure alone. It begins to feel like partnership, a cooperation between effort and divine support. And if your journey with Fajr has been inconsistent, if there are mornings you have missed and regrets you quietly carry, let this reflection ease rather than burden you. Regret, when it leads to return, is not a mark of failure but a sign of awareness. The door of renewal does not close because of past absence. Each dawn arrives as a fresh invitation untouched by yesterday's lapses. The sky does not withhold its light because it was ignored the day before, and Allah's mercy is far greater than the patterns of human disappointment. As the reminder gently slows, Allow the image of the horizon settling into full morning to rest in your mind, not as a command to transform instantly, but as reassurance that light does not rush those who walk toward it sincerely. You are not expected to become unrecognizable overnight. You are invited to take small steps that align your heart with the rhythm Allah placed in creation, steps that accumulate quietly until the soul begins to feel steadier, clearer, and more at peace. The first light of Fajr is not merely a time on a clock, it is a symbol of how Allah renews hope daily, even for hearts that arrive tired and unsure. Return to this reflection whenever your inner world feels dim, whenever the night of your thoughts stretches longer than expected, because reminders like these are not meant to be consumed once and forgotten. They are meant to be revisited, like dawn itself, offering the heart a familiar reassurance that light is not lost. It is simply on its way. And with every return, the soul learns to trust the transition a little more deeply until hope becomes less of a distant wish and more of a quiet certainty. O Allah, bring light into the hearts that feel heavy, awaken within us the desire to turn toward you at every new beginning. Grant us consistency without hardship and hope without fear, and allow the first light of every morning to remind us of your closeness and mercy. Amen.